Good morning.
Good morning.
Happy Father's Day.
It is June 19th, 2022, and it is Father's Day, and it is also Juneteenth. This is just the second year that Juneteenth is considered a federal highway. So
Highway.
holiday,
Yeah.
a federal
Well, I
holiday.
like that. It's a federal highway. It's a highway
it
to
is.
freedom. It's a highway to recognition.
It's a highway to
Yeah.
coming together.
Yeah, because up until the late 70s, early 80s, actually, an awful lot of everything we had to do with freedom was a dirt road.
Really.
And it's starting to be a highway now. It's actually even sometimes a two-lane highway where we can treat each other as equals. So, but that's really what Juneteenth is about. It's a recognition of our history, of the trials and tribulations and the victories and the courage that a people have had who have no reason to have any of that, but had it within them. And it's the unreasonable journey that they have all managed. And we're a part of.
Indeed, yes, indeed. And so today is also Father's Day. So we want to honor all of the fathers who have taken that journey. And we appreciate your love, your protection, your being a teacher.
The first part was easy.
And so we wish you all a happy, happy day. Our talk today is entitled, Is Your Life, or do you treat your life like a fiddle or a Stradavarius violin? Do you treat your life? So that includes a lot of things, and we're going to get into a lot of depth with this. But first of all, including some of what we're going to get into is how the subconscious works, the conscious mind, who's got the power, which is the power.
We'll be on for about an hour and a half.
And I would, in this prayer, I'm going to read you, written by Ernest Holmes. He refers to, and psychology originally referred to the subconscious as the subjective. So when I read subjective mind, you need to interpret that as the subconscious mind. That's how we refer to it today. So the title of this reading and prayer is called Today I Am Redeemed, which is another word for being saved. And when we say that, we mean saved from my own wrong thinking. Again, subjective mind here refers to the subconscious mind. So it reads, and this is from 365, today's writing. The larger part of our mental life is submerged. The habitual patterns of thought, which are subjective, automatically determine our physical and mental reactions. In this way, we are more or less hypnotized from the cradle to the grave. Inner impulsions of these subjective thought patterns are often stronger than the intellect and willpower. And willpower seems to have little effect on them. We must resort to imagination and feeling, to a deep conviction of an abiding faith in something greater than our will, higher than our intellect. In this way, we are redeemed. We stop using the creative power of the universe to produce limitation in our life, and instead begin to awaken to our vast possibilities. So this is the affirmative prayer that you may repeat after me to yourselves. Today I realize there is but one power in the universe, and that my redemption is at hand. The spirit within me refreshes me daily. I feel myself saturated with the life essence itself. I feel the same life essence flowing in and through me. I feel myself to be a perfect instrument in life's divine symphony, in tune with its harmony and perfection. My body is an instrument in, through, and upon which life plays a divine and perfect harmony. I am not going out in search of another power, but I'm going to use the power I know is already at the center of my own life. I know it heals every disharmony, overcomes every obstacle, breaks down every barrier, and frees me from every false condition. My redemption is assured.
Beautiful.
And so it is.
I wanted to start us off with where this title came from in my mind.
About fiddle or violin?
Fiddle or, yeah,
or
whether you're a fiddle or a
Stradavarius.
Stradavarius. I was working on my computer, creating a new piece of artwork and trying to create a fine piece, of course, as I always do. And I went to make a move, and I tried to remember whether I had made the move or not, the procedure that I wanted. And I had to go back and check to see if I had done what I thought I was going to do, because working the way I do, there's lots and lots of steps. And I recognized at that point how easy it would be to forget or make a mistake, and how easy it would be to lose all of the ability that I have to do everything that I'm doing. And I realized at that point what an extraordinary beings we are, and that we have the capacity to create extraordinary things and ideas. And at the same time, we're extraordinarily fragile. And in a heartbeat, literally in a heartbeat, we can lose it all, or we can excel in ways that we never even imagined that we could excel. And I thought about the violin as a very delicate, a very carefully crafted, a very special and wonderful instrument that is both powerful in that you can stand in a concert hall and play one string and hear that string being played across the entire hall. And that string is incredibly small, and that instrument is incredibly delicate, and the sound is incredibly powerful. And I thought, isn't that who we are? Aren't we extraordinarily powerful and extraordinarily fragile? And that fragility could also be defined as sensitivity, as an awareness of a world that we live in that is so intricate and so complex that it requires that sensitivity, and it requires that fragility to be able to fully embrace, while at the same time, there's extraordinary strength. And I think it's that blend of strength and fragility that has us have to pay attention to ourselves. And what that led me to was the question, am I treating myself like a fiddle, an instrument that can play music, or am I treating myself like a Stradavarius, an instrument that can play music that has history, that has a story, that has craftsmanship, that has elegance, that has qualities, character?
Well, you would treat them differently if you owned them.
No
both,
kidding.
right?
Yeah. So, but I think if we treat our instrument as a Stradavarius, it responds differently to the world than if we treat it like it's a disposable or a fiddle or something that doesn't require a nice case and careful carrying and tending and
Keeping safe.
Yeah, so that was what got me started with the idea. But I thought, wow, maybe every one of us needs to take a second look and ask ourselves, what would my life be like if I treated myself not like a fiddle, but like a Stradavarius?
Mhm. And by our lives, we're talking about our bodies, caring for our bodies,
Our
like
consciousness.
our consciousness, how we think, what we believe, and also how we value this thing we call our life. You know, it can be very difficult to overcome when your subconscious has accepted what you decided as a child. If you were treated like you were not valuable, you may have even been treated like you were unlovable. You may have been treated like you weren't worth very much. That's not being valued, not being accepted by others, by kids, or neighbors, whatever, family, and not being lovable. If you decide those things as a young child, that's very hard to overcome because your subconscious accepted that, believes it. And so your whole life will look like that. And you will keep encountering situations where you decide, well, this is happening because I'm really not lovable, or I'm really not acceptable, or I'm really not good enough, or
I'm really not smart. And
I really don't belong.
Yeah, and I see
I'm
people,
really not
and I
smart.
work with people all the time, and I've had to struggle myself with proving that I wasn't dumb rather than enjoying that I'm smart. And the activity may look the same, but the pressure to prove that you're not stupid versus the joy of discovering how you can use and appreciate and express your intelligence. But we have to overcome that obstacle that we're not good enough, that we're missing, or that we're less than. And when we're in a room with lots of Stradavarius, and that's actually everybody, and we come in as a fiddle, we're not going to be able to play.
Oh, we come in thinking we're good.
Yeah, well, we're going to come in not feeling like we're equal to. And then the question is, in the symphony that we join, will our instrument be heard by us as having the same value and the same importance as everyone else's instrument? No one else may notice if it's played well that you're representing yourself as less than you are.
So I'd like to do a little history lesson in regard to a brief history lesson in regard to psychology and our teaching, the science of mind, and how they viewed the subconscious and the conscious and which one had the power. Psychology originally, especially Freudian psychology, which was the early psychology, decided that what really had the power was the subconscious. And much like I said about decisions you make as a child or early experience, and that the conscious mind had no power to change that. So Freudian psychology analysis was all about allowing to come to the surface what you might babble in a therapy session, whatever came to mind, to find out what those beliefs were. But then you really had not much power to change it. Our teaching, which began in the late 1800s, and it had a totally different take on that. It said that the conscious can be controlled, the subconscious can be controlled by the conscious, because the conscious mind is connected to the mind of God, and it had the power to state, using the power of God in us, to overcome the subconscious. And so when I first came into this teaching in the 1970s, there was a big conflict between psychology and metaphysics and science of mind. And the metaphysics part was very much against psychology, and because it didn't like that concept of we're powerless. Interestingly, after all my studies in science of mind, I went to college and studied everything I could about psychology. And lo and behold, the current therapy that was coming into acceptance was cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive, how you think controls how you behave. Cognitive behavioral therapy. And the way that it works is, in therapy, you worked on changing your thoughts, because your thoughts control behavior.
Right. Would whoever is on that isn't muted, mute yourself, please.
Mute yourself,
yeah, thank
yes.
you.
So that was right in line with what we taught. If you want to change your life, change your thinking. And so they had to stop battling, and metaphysics and New Thought had to realize psychology had changed. So they're really quite compatible now. And so with this reading that I did earlier at the beginning, it discusses this difference between the subjective and the conscious mind, but it says the power then is the power of the God in us mind. That we can realize that there is a power greater than us. It's greater than we are, and we can use it. Then that is the real, that's going to the higher power for it. And what are you doing?
I'm trying to find a way to mute the person who's on there. Somebody doesn't know they're not muted.
Okay, let me go here and do mute all again.
First, thank you.
Okay.
Somebody's doing dishes, which is really nice, but not our dishes. If you're doing our dishes, we can put up with the noise.
Okay, so that's the history lesson. So how does that affect people today?
Well, and I think that
what
we have is a wonderful blending that we need to pay attention to, and that is, it's difficult to change with the conscious mind what's operating underneath us in the unconscious, because the unconscious often has us continue to have blind spots. And the question, and I guess, since we believe in our teaching of what we call prayer treatment, one of the stages of treatment, which is what stages of prayer, is to actually affirm something. And then if you find yourself in disagreement with the affirmation, in other words, you would affirm, I am whole, perfect, and complete. And as soon as I say that, some part of me says, yeah, right, you're kidding. Then what I would do is argue that in favor of the outcome, that I am whole, perfect, and complete. What is it that I'm believing about myself that says it's not true? How is it that I'm not as equal to, or as good as, or as human as every other human being? And when I can conclude that argument at the level of, yeah, I actually am whole, perfect, and complete, that has an impact on the unconscious belief that has been stored. So one has to argue against the things that run you in order to be able to change it. But first you have to recognize it.
Right. And the first thing you're recognizing is that the power you're using is the power of God.
Yeah.
And the second part is unifying with it, recognizing this, that power is in you.
Always.
Always. I'm struck by the similarities in the 12-step program, by the way. The first step in the first step program is recognizing that I'm powerless over whatever I'm addicted to. And then the next part is, well, there is a power greater than me. And the third step is, I think I'll use it. I think I'll accept it. I think, God can help. I think I'll accept that help. And so it's very similar with ours. It's working. The power comes from God, but it is in us. It operates in and through us. And so I can use it. I can affirm the positive. I injured my knee a few weeks ago, and the prayer I was doing, especially after last week's talk, when we were talking about loving our bodies and loving our body parts, is I've been affirming every morning that God in me, as me, loves my knees. And I would go through all the parts of my body.
I do too.
I'm still doing it. God in me, has me, loves every part of my body, because I've had a tendency, when I had a body part that wasn't doing what I thought it should do, I would be angry at it and say, this darn such and such, and this darn such, and be very impatient with it for not healing quickly or something. And I thought, that's the wrong approach. I need to love it as God in me would love it.
When a string breaks on the violin, you don't throw the violin away. When the violin gets scratched, you recognize that has...
And you don't get angry at the violin.
No, and you realize when it gets scratched or it gets dented or that it is always an instrument that was designed perfectly and beautifully, and that injuries and things will happen to it. You don't say, what kind of an instrument is this that it breaks?
Right.
It is an instrument that was designed not to last forever, but to play absolutely the most beautiful things. And the most beautiful part of it is that what it creates that is so beautiful doesn't exist inside of it or is a part of it. Think about that. That our creation, when we talk about I love you, when we talk about a song that moves us deeply, that brings us huge emotional experiences, that gives our life value, in the physical world, that doesn't exist. And so the instrument itself is just an instrument, and yet it's also a channel through which our nature can express. And when that breaks or is injured, it will break and it will be injured. It'll eventually, even the Stradavarius will fail to be an instrument we could use any longer.
Indeed. And how about our lives, Bob? How does that metaphor apply to what we expect of our lives, what we expect to experience or achieve in our lives,
Right. Well, I think the first thing is to value what we have as value, to give value to what we have and say that who I am is a divine expression. First off, I think it's even
this lifetime.
Yeah. And I think it's important to say, I wish sometimes I were a trumpet. I wish sometimes I were a piano, but it turns out I'm a Stradavarius. And because of that, I could make myself wrong in different circumstances, or I could understand that there's only certain things I can play and only certain ways I can play and only in certain places that I can play, and actually only for a while. And when we recognize that, then we accept that the things that are happening to us that seem to be in discord, they may be in discord because we're not here for that particular melody. We're not here for that particular thing. I think we should be all things to all people all of the time. And the truth is, we're instruments that are designed for a particular walk, for a particular journey. When I went to get tires for my car, they said, what kind of driving are you going to be doing? I said, what do you mean? Well, that'll help us decide what kind of tires you need, because they're all round, but they're all different and they all have a different function. They all are designed for different roads. I thought, whoa. And as a musician, I'm not a musician, but talking to a musician, one of the things I'll talk about is the strings that they choose for their guitar or their violin. They don't just have one string, there's several. What kind of music are you going to play? When you decide the strings that you need, which may have happened when you were born, when you decide the instrument that you were going to be, which may have been when you were born, that doesn't mean that you'd be able to play in every circumstance, or that playing would be well regarded in every circumstance, or that mastering your instrument would necessarily be something anyone else would notice, or that would have as much value for them as it does for you. You are a valuable instrument. You're here to play a valuable song. Others may not hear it, but you came here to play it and perfect it for your own good, for your own expression, for your own experience, not for anyone else. I was watching a George Carlin special, and it was really very funny. And he was saying, I like being on stage like this. And he said, see, you're here for me, and I'm here for me. Nobody's here for you. And I thought I was so sarcastic and caustic. And I thought, but we are all here for ourselves. In a very real way, we're here for ourselves. And it would be nice to share that journey with other people. We're not here for anyone else. We didn't come here. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to be here for me. And I'm going to try to do me the best I possibly can for the things that I came here to accomplish and to achieve. Does that mean it'll be without pain or without loss or without hurt? No, it doesn't. Does it mean the strings won't break? No, it doesn't. In fact, the strings may break every time you've got to play the most difficult song you've ever played. And it doesn't mean that you're a bad instrument. It means that apparently you're really taxing the strength of the instrument that you have to achieve the thing that you came here to achieve.
Now, what I suspect is that all of us treat parts of our life like a Stradavarius and many other parts like a fiddle.
That's good.
Who's made that?
You come up with that on your own?
Oh, no.
Damn.
And who made that decision? Who made that decision that this is a very worthwhile? I need to treat this part of my life like it's very worthwhile, and this part not so much.
Yeah.
And can you change your mind about that? Because we can change our mind at any time. It might be how you take care of your health, what you put into your body, how you treat it with love. It might be how you treat your career or your chosen path of self-expression. It might be how you interact with your family. But if you would just take a look at those areas and say, it looks like to me that I'm treating this part of my life like it's a fiddle. And I think I'd like to upgrade it to treating it like it's a Stradavarius. I think you'll find great improvements in those areas, just with that flip of the switch about how you think about it.
That's beautiful. I love that. I remember when I was younger, I thought I was a Stradavarius in bed. Now I think I'm a Stradavarius having coffee in the morning. We play our best music in the morning over coffee and conversation. Yeah. And the truth is, the earlier was an illusion.
It just felt like
it felt. Yeah, I thought this is music. Yeah. We all have to discover that music. And but our view of ourselves changes it.
Yeah. Another question.
Yes.
If in fact we think of our lives as a Stradavarius, and yet it appears that we're at the end cycle of our life, because we all have one on this physical plane. We will have a point at which we will leave. And it's how we think about it, and our culture largely thinks about it as the end and a terrible thing. And it often is accompanied with pain. So it's easy to call it a bad thing, to judge it. And yet, I would like to remind you of something that Benjamin Franklin wrote. He was invited to speak at a friend's funeral. And he said, let's think of it like this. Our friend and we were invited to a grand party abroad. He has arrived there before us. And who are we to say that we should all arrive at the party at the same time? He has just arrived before us. And I love that letter.
Who's to say he shouldn't leave before us?
Yeah, who's to say he shouldn't leave before or get there? See, he said arriving was the party, like going to heaven. Or going to the other side is a party. It's the good part.
Yeah.
It's much like Ram Dass talks about that dying is like
taking off a slipper.
Taking off
a tight slipper.
Tight slipper.
Yeah. Well, I think
a tight shoe.
I think the problem with that is we think that the instrument is
broken.
We think the instrument is the thing to be cherished. The instrument is the thing to be taken care of, because what it creates is what's to be cherished. That is what comes through that instrument. What that instrument was designed to create is what we cherish. We cherish the songs that have been played on it. We cherish the memory of the song. We don't cherish the instrument itself. We know that's eventually going to just fall apart and break down, as it does. But so I think the separation between, we are each an instrument. We need to treat ourselves like a valuable and important one, and love and show kindness to it, but understand that it will break down, and eventually when it falls apart completely, or when when it disintegrates, it never was the thing that we wanted. Nobody ever buys a violin so they can hang it on the wall, and unless they love music and want to remember the things that they've heard on it. They don't. They buy a violin to play it, and the harder you play it, the more wear it's going to show. I saw, I can't think of his the folk singer, or not folk singer, country singer, who Willie Nelson. If you've ever seen Willie Nelson's guitar, I mean, this guitar,
Got a hole in
it's got a
front.
hole in it, yes. And but what's interesting is, and he loves that instrument, and he plays that instrument, and he doesn't berate the hole. He simply says, this has history, this has a story, and it's my instrument. It doesn't make the music, it allows the music to come through it. So I think on our worst days, what we want to be able to say to ourselves is, I am the instrument through which this beautiful thing called creation can take place and can be expressed. And on my worst days, I probably will forget that and miss that, but that doesn't mean that it's not true.
I would like to end by honoring fathers by just sharing briefly about my father. My father, I think, epitomized what a lot of children feel about their fathers, is that they are all powerful, invulnerable. They are the protector. They are the ones who got things done, who fixed everything, who took care of us and loved us. And I just thought he was Superman.
They invented duct tape.
Was Superman. And well, that's for you to use, both. Father didn't have duct tape, but at any rate, and yet, he died. He made his transition, and younger than we ever would have thought. And it's so easy from a physical standpoint to think, the strong are vulnerable and it's over. And yet I had the wonderful experience of having him talk with me after he passed, and the realizations he had now that he was on the other side, which sounded like a wonderful place to be. He was not sorry to be there. And so I just would like to remind you that all of our fathers make their transitions, and we need, although it was a loss for us,
Mm-hmm.
It is not a loss for that soul that is ever and ever evolving.
And what's really important in that piece too is I was there when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
The content of that conversation was not something
spot on.
It was spot on, and it was not something you would have necessarily thought on your own or agreed to.
No.
So it was from a perspective with information that was really valuable, that couldn't have come from you, but could come from another source. And for me, that's just another validation that this life is a continuous life. I don't know when we transition, what our next violin is going to look like. I don't know whether we'll come back as a tuba or a harp or an 88 key piano, or maybe not at all. Maybe we'll come back as the song, but I think what we have to constantly know is that this is a journey in which we are not going to ever be done with the journey. This is a continuous journey, a forever journey.
And with that,
we're gonna end this segment of it. For those of you that are going to tune in to later and watch this and wonder what was the song we played, we're playing a really great song, and it's by, what's her name now? Can't think of it.
Small.
Yeah, Heather Small, and it's called "What Have You Done to Make Yourself Proud?" And I think it's a really wonderful piece, and you can go on YouTube and get it. There's several different versions of it, so I would highly recommend it. Listen to it when you're not feeling good about yourself. Listen to it when you need to be lifted up. We all need to be lifted up. Listen to it when you need a tune-up. Oh yes, we want to also mention, and thank you. I mentioned last week that this is not a ministry that is free of cost for us. And I jokingly said, God has trouble with money. He's always needing more money. Actually, God doesn't need it. We do, to manage the ministry. But what happened was we received a great deal more, many more gifts than we had expected, and appreciate that, and thank you for that. So remember that you can donate to our ministry here if you'd like to.
Yeah, like just tomorrow we pay our annual Zoom
Oh
fee
yeah.
for having an account.
Yeah,
so there are costs.
Yeah, there's quite a few costs that people don't realize that we just don't get on and do this. So anyway, how do they donate, Judith? This sounds like PBS.
Oh yes, let me do a screen share and show you our website, which is cslpalmbeaches.org. And when you type that into your browser, this is our homepage, and we have here ways that you can donate. So I always like to share this because it is a prosperity affirmation
What you
that
give.
what we give returns to us, pressed down and multiply. So share with me if you would, because we do consider it an investment. When you share with where you get your inspiration, it increases your prosperity. So our prosperity treatment says, my investment today is made with the full realization that God is the source of my supply and returns it to me enriched and multiplied. And so it is.